Welcome back to the Tennessee Football Podcast. This is Clint Guthrie,
Nathan McLaughlin, what's up?
and we are covering last week's draft this week, along with
Big time.
just some diving a little bit into the college part of our podcast we normally do. But typically, this is going to be just how the teams did this week, and also if you hear any noise in the background, that is fans.
Where we don't die.
It's my room.
Yeah.
It's like really hot for some reason, and the AC is working just fine. So, first off, this is one that Saban has clearly talked about several times. Ronnie Harrison thought he was talking about him, and also Jimbo Fisher said it too. Players that leave too early and that are not picked in the top 3 rounds of the draft. I understand, like, if you stay a year and get hurt, I get that. Like it happened with Eddie Jackson, and he failed. What did he go like 4th round?
Yeah, and
he's starting.
And I also kind of understand. I understand doesn't mean I still agree with it. I understand where people are like, well, you got to think about these players and their families and things like that. Sometimes they really need that money, and it is different. But at the same time, you get so much more leeway if you're a 1st or 2nd round pick than you do when you're a 5th or 6th round pick. You might make that money in immediacy, but if you go and blow it and spend all the money trying to take care of all your family, and you turn around and you don't play well, you get hurt, you get cut, like you're not afforded that same luxury that 1st and 2nd round picks are. 1st and 2nd round picks like Blake Crappy Bortles, they get chance after chance after chance after chance after chance after chance after chance. I can't say it enough. After chance.
Well, I mean,
they're the same as what we're going to talk about later. 5-star recruits coming out of high school. They get chance after chance after chance after chance. It never ends. Where these other guys that are late round picks and end up blooming, or undrafted free agents and they end up blooming, or like in the college game, like 1 or 2-star recruits and they end up blooming, they're not afforded those same chances, which is really unfair, but it's the way it works here, apparently.
Well, like Mack Wilson he was a 1st round draft pick at the beginning of the year. Well, as Bama's defense started getting kind of torched as the year went on, and then what happened in the championship game in the playoffs, I think Mack probably got exposed, and then he fell to the 5th round.
And a thing about that is I think that I kind of discussed it with some people in the comments, some actual sane Alabama fans for once, in the comments on Facebook about the defensive coordinator, like Tosh LaPoy, and then it apparently switched to Pete Golding midway during the year. It probably had something to do with it, but it wasn't all the defensive coordinator's fault why they collapsed. He's the one that makes the calls out there, and I will go on the record and say that I am almost certain that Mack Wilson messed up a lot of calls.
Oh yeah. Excuse me. If Reuben Foster calls the defense better than you do,
we got problems.
You got problems. And Mack, when he talks, he sounds like he's an intellectual person, and he doesn't have a history of getting in trouble that I know of. Like Reuben did. So
I think the bigger problem with Mack Wilson is it doesn't seem like he's studious. It seems like he wants all the glory and all the fame and all the Twitter notoriety, but he's not getting in there watching film, grinding out.
Absolutely.
And I may be wrong. Maybe somebody comes up and they say Mack Wilson works harder at watching film than you ever will in your entire life. And I'm like, I'll have to debate that depending on my future. But I'm going to say it outright. I mean, I think that he messed up a lot of calls. This year, I don't think. It wasn't just a defensive coordinator messing everything up. I'm just not going to. I'm not buying that.
If defensive schemes changed through the year, then it might have been, like you said, the coordinators. That's not knowing the coordinator switched. Defensive schemes changed. That could have thrown him off, but he's not like, since Saban's been there, and Rolando McClain was the first quarterback of the defense, we've always had that guy. Dante Hightower, C.J. Mosley,
absolutely,
Reggie Ragland, and then this past year we haven't had that. And it really, in my opinion, and there was a lot of first year starters, and we're getting off on a tangent. But I do like Deontay Thompson and Savion Smith falling as far as they did. And I think they were like first year starters, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Savion was.
Yeah, Savion had just come in, and then Deontay Thompson was also kind of a first round, or not first round, was a first year starter because he had just kind of been in and out, and he had played well in the national championship game, and so they all of a sudden said, well, Deontay is going to be a starter, and he's probably going to be a first round pick. Well, his play really tailed off there towards the end. You know, maybe those teams got good players. I go on the record as an Alabama fan saying I wouldn't have drafted Mack Wilson. I probably wouldn't have drafted Deontay Thompson either, unless it was a late flyer.
Maybe the Browns will. Maybe, I mean, they're not gonna. He's not gonna get a lot of money with the Browns.
No.
Being drafted in the 5th round. So, I mean, he still has to make a roster, but they kind of got him probably in a value pick. Maybe he's a value pick for him.
Yeah, hopefully
Maybe
so.
he'll play with a chip on his shoulder. But that will fall into the next topic of the 5-star recruits being drafted.
5-star recruits getting drafted with very little or no college track record because they keep getting chances. This happened this year with a guy named Byron Cowart that got drafted by New England in the 5th round, I believe. This guy went to Auburn right out of the bat. He was like the top recruit in the nation. Went to Auburn, did nothing. Transferred to Maryland. I don't even know if he played. All of a sudden, he goes out for the draft and he gets drafted in the 5th round. You have guys, and I know it's a completely different position, but you got guys that went undrafted like David Sills from West Virginia that was a quarterback out of high school, switched to wide receiver, and over the past 2 almost 2,000 yards receiving and like over 30 touchdowns receiving, and he goes undrafted. But you get a guy in Cowart, and he gets all the accolades and all the praise. Just like Rashawn Gary was the top overall pick in the nation. Rashawn Gary did some things at Michigan, but he did not live up to a 5-star potential. Like, he was a 3 or 4-star recruit playing in a 5-star athlete's body. He gets drafted in the first 15 picks by Green Bay. Off of what? What did he do? And everybody's talking about, it's not a really good pick, and I have to agree with him. The one time I'm going to agree with Skip Bayless, he was like Rashawn Gary. Like, they got rid of Clay Matthews. Now, Clay Matthews is aging, and he's not the same player. But when they drafted Clay Matthews, he had only been a starter for a year, but he was a high motor guy. And Skip was like, Rashawn Gary is a low motor guy. And I was like, you can't have a low motor guy like that.
Clay's number?
Yeah, they gave him Clay's number. And how ridiculous is that?
Yeah, because Skip was defending Clay and Fan. Shannon was not. He was in disagreements with Skip on the topic. But
yeah, and I remember saying that. And I don't agree with Shannon on that. I do think that the Packers did Clay Matthews. I don't. They didn't have to bring him back, but you ain't got to sit there and rub it in and do him like that. And Shannon's like, well, what other numbers is he supposed to have? I was like, there's a ton of numbers that he could have had besides 52. They picked 52 for a reason. And it's disrespectful to Clay Matthews.
I'm happy J.K. Scott's there, but I just don't think that's a very good organization.
It's not. I don't think so either.
Because if you let Aaron Rodgers has won you 1 Super Bowl. Yeah, he's a generational talent, but he's won you 1 Super Bowl in however many years he's been there. And let's be honest, he is the reason Mike McCarthy's gone.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you're calling plays, audibling plays so that they will fail. They can look bad on Mike McCarthy because Mike McCarthy was a play caller there.
Yeah.
And you're just not. It's not a good organization because the front office had to know about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's ludicrous. And I don't know. Maybe that's true. Maybe that's not true.
And they don't have a lot of talent because they had to get a bunch of like low-end defensive talent. They traded away Ha Clinton Dix. They had to get a bunch of low-end defensive talent because Aaron cost them.
Now, I'll say this. They did go in and they spent in free agency. They got some guys in there like Zadarius Smith and Adrian Amos that plays safety. They went out and they got some pretty good players on defense. They should be a better team overall, but it's all going to depend on how Mr. Fragile Aaron Rodgers, if he stays healthy or not. If he doesn't stay healthy, it's over for him. But if he does stay healthy, now there's something we could be talking about. But in any case, that is a poorly run organization. I feel the exact same way. I feel like they need to get their crap together, and you know they need to quit letting Aaron Rodgers run that entire franchise.
He runs that. I mean, he runs that.
It's like the owners even listen to Aaron Rodgers. Well, what would you like to do, Mr. Rodgers?
Well, I don't know. Let's hire a guy that was an offensive coordinator and never had a head coaching position in the NFL, which Freddie Kitchen hasn't either. But Freddie Kitchen's been in the league a long time, so he can manipulate them. That's what I think is going to go on there. But that's not. We're not going to get into that.
Still not as bad of a hire as Zach Taylor to the Bengals. Zach Taylor was a quarterbacks coach for 1 year in Los Angeles and got a head coaching job. He was an offensive coordinator at Cincinnati, not the Bengals, but the Bearcats for 1 year, and they were like 103rd in offense. So that's the worst hire.
So which teams do you think did the best?
Which teams do I think drafted the best? I would want to say Cardinals because they got, what they feel is a franchise quarterback. Now, time was going to tell on Kyler Murray, but I would want to say it, but they should have addressed offensive line earlier. They got their first 2 picks, they got really right, but then they took a bunch of wide receivers. Maybe they'll work, but they don't need to take a bunch of wide receivers when they've got to have offensive line help. They could have found at least a decent center in the 3rd round or 4th round, I believe, because centers usually fall that far.
Yeah.
So I can't really give them a good grade. Not saying that I can't give them a good grade, but I can't give them a best grade. I'm not gonna lie, I really like my Steelers.
They did very well.
I thought I'd never believed that they would trade up to draft somebody, but they did. They picked Devin Bush. That's who I wanted because, as much as I love him. Ryan Shazier's got to be replaced. It's gotten to the point where
they
put him on the PUP list, which means that he still gets benefits and he still gets pay, but he's obviously probably not going to play. He says he's going to play again.
To perform or something like that.
Yeah, physically unable to perform list. They traded up to get Devin Bush. They picked. I thought it was kind of an odd pick, but they picked a guy named Deontay Johnson that's a wide receiver out of Toledo in the 3rd round. I think he'll end up being a pretty decent player. I was hoping and praying that by the 7th round they would pick David Sills. David Sills was one guy I was really rooting for to get picked in this draft, and I was hoping Pittsburgh picked him.
He torched the Big 12.
I was hoping Pittsburgh would pick him. They didn't, and then I was scared New England was going to pick him in the 7th round, and then they didn't. And then the Bills got him, and I'm okay with the Bills getting him.
Yeah,
but
they don't have a good quarterback.
Exactly. But Pittsburgh picking Isaiah Buggs, I thought that was pretty cool. Time will tell if Isaiah Buggs will work out, but I do think he can be, if he just works hard, I think he can be a good piece, a rotational piece behind like Stephon Tuitt in the defense. And they picked a corner out of Michigan State that was slotted as high as the 1st or 2nd round. They picked him in the late 3rd, so they got a really good value pick out of him.
Well, they said that they were saying that Pittsburgh was drafting for their division. Because of how run heavy the team like New England is, and how run heavy like
absolutely
the Ravens and just other teams in that division, how run heavy they are. They're getting back to what Steelers football used to be, since they don't have 2 drama queens on the team.
Yep.
And I feel like it might change that whole locker room, and they don't have to deal with that anymore. So
the
attitude of the team, I think, will shift, and so that whole division just needs to watch out, because I think Pittsburgh can do pretty well.
Yeah, definitely. I would also say, trying to think real quick, Jacksonville got the steal of the draft by pretty much waiting and getting to pick Josh Allen, out of Kentucky.
Now I understand why Oakland picked Cleveland Farrell. What is?
I think he's a good player, but I
Mike-
think they could have got him later.
Mike Mayock is that there?
Mike Mayock's their GM.
He watched. He went to the Natty and watched Clemson's defense perform as well as they did, and he felt, this is words from his mouth, that Cleveland Farrell was the leader of that defense
That big
outside of Dexter Lawrence and what was the other
Christian
one?
Wilkins.
He felt that he was the leader. Now they were also wondering, well, how did the other two players make him look really well? But they said you can go
I can
back 3
understand that.
years and see how special he is.
Now I'll say this about all those monsters there. My thing is Dexter Lawrence tested well, but I think Dexter Lawrence is the least likely to succeed out of all of them. I think Christian Wilkins is a fine leader, and I
Is he
think
number 42.
yeah,
Okay.
Christian Wilkins was 42,
Yeah.
and I think Cleveland Farrell is just such a good player. I think
Well,
that
he's longer. I think.
yeah,
I think he's longer.
like Dexter Lawrence was one of the top-rated recruits. He was the top-rated recruit out of all of them coming out. But I think that kind of gave him kind of a sense of entitlement. Not saying that he, wasn't good or anything, but he would be the guy that I'd be the most worried about out of all those guys getting picked. That he would be the one that doesn't really pan out. I think Cleveland Farrell was a fine pick. I just think that they could, if they were going to pick Cleveland Farrell, they could have traded down and got him later. And got more picks.
But also that they thought, this is opinions, and I agree with his opinions, that they drafted good dudes, good guys.
Yeah,
like
definitely.
high class, come from, Jacobson, obviously Josh Jacobs is a very good guy, always had a chip on his shoulder. And then,
Now, see, by that token, you could say Josh Allen is a great high character
I'm not
guy.
discrediting that either.
I just think they should. I think if they wanted Cleveland Farrell, they should have traded down and drafted Cleveland Farrell. Because they could have, if they were going to stay in that pick, they should have picked Josh Allen. I think Josh Allen will be more impactful than Cleveland Farrell is. I hope Cleveland Farrell is an All-Pro. I hope that the Raiders can get it right. And I don't think the Raiders had a bad draft overall. Like everybody else is going to hound them for their terrible 3 picks in the first round. I think they picked fine in the first round. I think everybody's saying, well, Josh Jacobs had the 4th most rushing yards on Alabama's team. How could you pick that guy in the first round? Everybody had him going in the first round.
I'm not sure why Damian fell as late as he did.
I don't know why he did, but he ended up in the perfect situation.
Yeah, and Colin, idiot, he said, because he was questioning New England's draft.
He's like, they draft a running back that can't catch.
And they said that he rushed, he was the 3rd most rusher on the team, which is not true.
Yeah, that's not true at all.
So he's an idiot.
I was shocked when I went back and looked at how much yards Najee Harris had last year.
Yeah, he had a lot.
He was the 2nd leading rusher on the team, I believe. But yeah, they don't understand. James White can get in there and catch the ball. Damian Harris and Sony Michel can get in there and run the ball. And they just got another great player.
Irv Smith was going to fall to New England at 32.
I thought they would have picked him too, but I didn't. The Vikings were the last team I would have expected to pick him because they have Kyle Rudolph, but I guess they're trying to shop him off. There's a lot of people thinking that New England will trade for Rudolph.
I don't like Herb going there because I think he might be underutilized.
Sandbagged by Kirk Cousins.
Because I don't like Kirk Cousins. Great guy, it's not a good quarterback.
Kirk Cousins, he can play, but he can't play enough. He can't play well enough. He can throw for yards and throw for touchdowns, but he can't
play to win.
He's not a big-time game quarterback, and he's not going to be. And the Vikings are not going to be able to win a Super Bowl with him under center. They had a much better shot with Case Keenum, and that says a lot.
They should have kept Case Keenum.
Well, since Pat Shurmur left,
that offense doesn't fit.
Yeah, I feel like Pat Shurmur probably made Case Keenum more because Case Keenum's not a good quarterback. He just got made and had a wonder year, and everybody was like, "Why is it Case Keenum getting paid all this money?" Well, Case Keenum's not a very good quarterback. He's very limited in what he can do, but Pat Shurmur just made the most out of it. Now, at the same time, Pat Shurmur is a good offensive mind. Is he a head coach, a great head coach? I don't know. I'm not sold on him. I think Dave Gettleman has sandbagged him in New York. It's going to be bad. I don't think that he's going to be able to succeed because of what Dave Gettleman has done.
Yeah, like you can point like with, and this will go back to the Daniel Jones, and I'm happy for Daniel Jones because Daniel Jones is not a top quarterback in this draft, and he was also number 7th overall in passing in the ACC this past season and got beat by Wake Forest 55-7.
And everybody wants to throw the whole,
Tom
he was on an awful team, blah 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 with Duke and blah blah blah. Everybody's dropping passes and he's really super accurate and stuff like that. I don't buy Daniel Jones as a 6th overall pick. I just don't.
Now you can't, and people will say, "Well, Tom Brady was." It's not. No, this is. I get it. Tom Brady didn't have a good time.
If everybody was so smart, Tom Brady would have been drafted with the 1st overall pick, but he wasn't. Everybody skipped that. But the thing is like even back then, the NFL was so predicated on their prototype quarterback having this strong arm that a guy that threw for less than 50% at a Division I AA school, Spurgeon Wynn, got picked by Cleveland like 16 spots before Tom Brady did. Spurgeon Wynn was a 49% passer that had a losing record at a Division I AA school and still got picked before Tom Brady. That's how archaic the NFL was even back then. Nowadays it seems like people are kind of getting a little bit smarter, but people are still. The big problems with America and the big problems with the NFL are problems with America. We're obsessed with size and we're obsessed with athleticism. We're not obsessed with people working hard like we say we are. If you were obsessed with people working hard, then Chase Winovich would have went higher than he did because he worked hard all year long. I don't like Michigan. I'd rather Michigan lose every single game that they play besides Ohio State. I'd rather them go 1-11 than beat Ohio State every year. But Chase Winovich worked his tail off, and he reminds me a lot of Clay Matthews, probably a little less athletic.
Now, Chase Winovich probably doesn't fit in another system other than New England.
What, like New England system?
Because they have that underdog mentality, and he's got the underdog mentality.
But you reward these guys with just athleticism and no numbers to show for it, like Rashawn Gary, that did nothing. You reward these guys with how they were recruited in high school and how they were scouted in high school, like Byron Cowart, who did nothing his entire college career and still got a 5th-round pick. But you got David Sills over there that catches for over 30 touchdowns in 2 seasons and doesn't get drafted even in the 7th round, and he was one of the better wide receivers in the Big 12. I mean, there's just dumb things like that that just don't make any sense. And then you got it tickles me to death because people are mad because Tyree Jackson didn't get drafted because he's 6'7", 250, and he runs this 40 time. And hey, have you ever seen him actually throw the ball against another team? He's so terribly inaccurate that it hurts. Tall quarterbacks don't work because their head cannot move quick enough and they can't look people off like super tall quarterbacks. Listen, if you don't think there's a difference between 6'6" and 6'7", go back and look at the statistics. 6'7" and up is too tall in the NFL. 6'6" is too tall unless you have good head movement. Like Trevor Lawrence, he's not too tall. He's 6'6", but Trevor Lawrence is, everybody that talks about him talks about his head movement is one of the best they've ever seen. And Trevor Lawrence will be a top draft pick by the end of his junior year. That's just how it's going to be. But these super tall 6'7", 6'8" quarterbacks that we're all obsessed with, like Brock Osweiler and Ryan Mallett, let's see how well they worked out. Yeah. It's all about size and athleticism in America. It's not about working hard and, not necessarily being the best athlete, but getting out there and just winning.
I mean, yeah, I just...
That's why Tom Brady didn't go until the 199th pick. That's why Chase Winovich went in the 3rd round. And I'm not saying Chase Winovich deserved to be drafted with the top 10 picks or anything like that, but he worked harder. Why is it he gets drafted in the 3rd round and 2 rounds later, a guy that never did anything in college, Byron Cowart, a guy that completely whiffed on sacking Jake Coker and let Jake Coker when Carl Lawson came and Jake Coker avoided him, and then Byron Cowart completely whiffed on Coker. Coker gets to the outside, throws it to Ardarius Stewart for a touchdown. That's about all that Cowart's memorable for, is completely whiffing on Jake Coker when he had a clear shot at him. And then you reward him by drafting him in the 5th round. I don't understand GM sometimes.
No.
And that's Belichick. Belichick's the one that picked him.
They also drafted Jarrett Stidham,
which is completely shocking. And then you got people that stick up for Jarrett Stidham. Oh, well, he played on a terrible team. It was his decision to go to Auburn.
Yeah.
It wasn't anybody else's.
He left Baylor.
Shouldn't have went to Auburn. That's what you get for going there. You get terrible. Sorry, that's the Bama fan coming out in me, but come on, seriously. All you got to do is go back and look at the draft and see how well Auburn's doing.
I don't think Dwayne Haskins would have been a good fit for the Giants if they're going to make Daniel Jones sit behind Eli for a couple more years.
Dwayne Haskins does not have the temperament to sit behind anybody. That's why he's going to try to go in there and he's going to try to beat out Case Keenum for that starting spot in Washington. And he may very well do it. The thing that I worry about with Dwayne Haskins is a concern that a lot of people have about playing around good talent. Was it just his wide receivers that were super fast and his offensive line that was super good and better than everybody else, or was it really Haskins is this good? I don't think Haskins is a great footwork guy. I don't think he's really there yet on footwork. I think he can throw the ball, even though his shoulders stay perfectly like in a perfect line. I don't understand how somebody's shoulders can do that. And he just kind of like hurls the ball like Phillip Rivers does. It works for Phillip Rivers. I don't know if it'll work for Haskins, and I don't know how well Haskins is going to be.
But they said that the offensive scheme that they run is a lot of dink and dunking.
It is.
And that's what...
Because they have 3 wide receivers that ran 4 threes. I mean, that's just how it was. Paris Campbell and, I don't know who the other 2 are.
So it fits better. Now, and it's the same way with Kyler Murray. Like, people say Kyler's not going to do anything, and he very well not, but he doesn't fit in any other system.
Absolutely.
You're not going to send him to the Giants or Washington or somewhere else where he's taking snaps under center for like 5-6 plays a series. He doesn't fit anywhere else. I don't think Dwayne Haskins fits anywhere else.
Yeah, I'm not a guy that bets money, but I will bet and say that, not any money, but I'll bet and say that I think Kyler Murray will be more successful than Dwayne Haskins is, just because I think Kyler Murray is a lot more there as a passer. All you have the concerns with about Kyler Murray is the height.
He's the same height as Russell Wilson.
But he's only a few inches. He's not a few inches. He's a few, tenths of an inch shorter than Russell Wilson is. And the thing is he's not a guy that just uses running. Like, he doesn't just look for a read and then run. He is like Russell Wilson. He can get out of there, but he tries to stay in and make plays, with his arm. And I was not high on Kyler Murray because I thought he was literally going to come out and measure at like 5'8", because I thought he looks that short. I mean, he looks terribly short compared to everybody else.
And that 207 or 210, whatever he was.
And you know what? If he would have went to New England or something, I would have rooted against him the entire time. But since he's going to Arizona, I don't dislike Cliff Kingsbury. I always liked him at Texas Tech. I do think his social media break thing is really stupid. But, I've always liked Cliff Kingsbury. I hope they have success. Arizona deserves success. They are the franchise that drafted Pat Tillman, after all.
So I hope he does well. I think San Francisco did pretty well, too. They're going to be a team that I think look out for in their division, since they have D Ford now, and now they have I always get them confused. It's Nick Bosa, right?
Nick Bosa.
They drafted.
Nick Bosa.
So I'm excited because I like Jimmy Garoppolo, and I like that organization. And you got Nick Mullins, an Alabama native. I don't even know if he's still – is he still on the team?
I think he is.
So I like that organization. I'm excited to see what they do. I'm excited for the Browns. I think everybody's rooting for the Browns.
Yeah, everybody.
Maybe except Bengals fans.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. If I as a Steelers fan can root for the Browns, then I think a lot of people are.
I think they've done very well trading around players and getting.
And I'll tell you what, they, now time's going to tell. They haven't went out there and played the games
No,
yet.
they put a lot of talent around.
But if they have a winning season, get to the playoffs, even if they just get to the playoffs, that entire franchise, Jimmy Haslam and everybody owes John Dorsey, the GM, a friggin' thank you.
Yeah.
Because John Dorsey has done magic. It's up to the coaches and the players to do it now. John Dorsey has worked his magic.
Mm-hmm. No, he absolutely has.
He went from being fired at the Chiefs to he has done wonders with that Browns roster. That Browns roster used to be terrible, and now they've got high-profile players at just about every position. He has worked his way up, and as long as they just play on the field and have success, he'll be recognized as one of the top 3 GMs in the league. Howie Roseman of the Eagles is one. Belichick is just because he has won so much that he can convince people to take a lot less money than they are worth and get a bunch of veteran players that can play really well in there on cheap deals. Like I said, Howie Roseman and John Dorsey's working his way up, being one of those top GMs in the league. All they got to do is put it together on the field now, because he's got the players there.
So, what do you think about Dallas drafting those 2 lower end running backs? Because they still have to pay Cam and stuff. They're not Cam.
Ezekiel Elliott.
Zeke, they have to pay Zeke, but they also have to pay Dak and they have to pay Amari, and then there's some other players that they've got to pay.
They're getting rid of Zeke.
I think so too.
They're going to let him go. They're going to keep Dak because they feel like he's their franchise quarterback right now. They don't want to get rid of Dak and then let him go to some other team and then have to find another quarterback. They're going to pay for Dak. Paying for Dak means, and they're probably going to pay for a top target, which is Amari. They're going to let Zeke go because they feel like they can get a running back that can do halfway as good as what he can do, and let Zeke get off and get his money somewhere else like Le'Veon Bell did. I think that's exactly what's going to happen. I could be wrong, but I feel like Dallas is going to try to, and maybe we're reading too much into it right now, but I do believe when the time comes, Dallas is going to shy away from Zeke because they're not going to be able to pay all those marquee offensive talents. You're just not going to be able to.
Not enough money, and also Zeke has got a lot of miles on him.
Zeke's got a lot of miles on him. They run him into the ground.
Yeah, he's led the league like the last 2 years in rushing.
And believe me, he's a great running back, but
But look at Todd Gurley.
It's so hard to pay for those running backs
look at Todd Gurley. Like they paid him, and now he wasn't himself through the playoffs.
I mean, why would you pay one guy $12 million a year when you can pay 2 guys $2 million a year apiece to do the same job, and you can rotate them in and stay fresh? That's how a lot of people look at it, and I can't lie. It's just how it is. Now, I'm not like Mel Kiper, and I still think that running backs definitely can and should be drafted in the first round because they are impactful players, but it's hard to pay for a marquee because you can get somebody that can do almost as good of a job and get somebody else that does a good job, and you're paying a fraction of the cost for it. It's just what it comes down to is the NFL is a bottom line business. It's a business, and that's just what they do. They deal with money, and there's a salary cap. It's not like the Yankees and MLB and all that where they can just pay for whichever players they want to as long as they're rich. If it was that true, Dallas would be in the top running every single year.
Also, and we're blowing through these topics. What do you think about Will Grier getting drafted? The Panthers.
Panthers are concerned with Cam Newton's shoulder.
He's had 2 surgeries in the past 2 years on his shoulder.
And it sounds, unless he just comes back and he's fine.
He hasn't even thrown a ball yet.
Because
this year he hasn't thrown.
It sounds a lot like Chad Pennington. Chad Pennington was a guy that got picked in that same draft with Tom Brady. He was a first-round pick. He's a very good thrower of the football, but shoulder surgeries derailed his career. And he's still the most accurate passer in NFL history. But his shoulder surgeries just took the zip off of the ball. You take the zip off that ball from Cam, and it's going to be over.
See, it started for Cam. I think it started like when they get the shit kicked out. Excuse my language. But it's just subconsciously slipped out. When they got their teeth kicked in by Pittsburgh, he was throwing the ball funny, and I don't know if it was I don't know if it was like when he got hit and they scooped that fumble up and scored. There was something in that game. And he was never right since. Like the rest of the year, and he was like short arming the ball. And people were like, he
Yeah.
can't throw anymore. He sucks. And it's like, no, it's because he got hit and he was putting off and putting off and putting off. And
I wouldn't be surprised. I'll tell you this. I'll just come out with it right now. I wouldn't be surprised if Cam Newton retires here very soon. I don't think he's a guy that wants to play until he's 40 years old.
I don't think so either. I don't know if I could put a finger on when he would retire. But he had a lot of miles on him in college. Because let's be honest, they ran power with Cam in college. They run power in the NFL with him. You just, like Shannon said, you just don't do that with a quarterback
Because you're getting hit so hard.
He's so big, and there's been a lot of penalties that weren't called on him that were called on Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers just because of how big he is. And like in the Super Bowl, he was just getting hammered. I don't see him playing much longer, and if he does, he's not going to be as impactful because it's May 4th and he's not throwing football yet. He's on his second shoulder surgery.
His retirement is sooner rather than later, in my opinion. It's just happening. It's going to happen pretty soon. Now, is Will Grier the successor? I'm not going to go on a limb and say that because I don't know if Will Grier is quite the quarterback that they need. They would probably have to end up drafting somebody in the first round, and maybe Will Grier works out. But Cam Newton's retirement's coming sooner rather than later. I didn't say it was this year, but it's sooner rather than later. He don't want to play till he's 40 years old.
Also, other than his MVP season, he's not had that great of seasons.
No, not at all.
And at one point, he led the league in interceptions, but either led or was right behind Blake Bortles.
Yeah, he was. I mean, he's been a decent quarterback, but he's never been elite. You know, he was about like Matt Ryan. There was that one year where you did a really good job. You got to the Super Bowl or whatever, and I think he even won MVP in 2015.
He did,
but he ain't never been a top 5 quarterback. That's just, if you think he's ever been a top 5 quarterback, you're lying to yourself because he's never been a top 5 thrower of the football. That those honors are saved for Brady and Breeze and Aaron Rodgers, and
and also I think he's got an option on his contract that they don't have to pay his 5th year or something in that. I'm not familiar with it, but they can get out of his contract.
Yep.
And not have to pay him an additional whatever that is in his last year. So I don't know. I like Will Grier. I think he's better than like the other however many quarterbacks were taken.
Jarrett Stidham.
And
he's proved a lot more in his time than Jarrett Stidham did in his. And he had some pretty decent wide receivers to throw too, but am I gonna say he's the guy there? I don't know, but Cam's retirement's coming sooner rather than later. I didn't say it was this year, but it's coming sooner rather than later. He is just a guy that you've never gotten the impression he wants to play till he's 40. He's not got that Tom Brady will to play for a long time.
So, kind of on into our next topic. Dabo's Bama clause.
I'll tell you about Dabo's Bama clause. I saw this article that talked about it, and I kind of agree with it. I think they just threw it in there to kind of be funny. I don't think it was really anything that was super serious.
Bama's got to pay like $2 million more than.
That's exactly what everybody's saying. All the dummies that think that can't see it, they're like, oh, they put that in there because they don't want him going there. You don't think Alabama would shell out $6 million to buy out Dabo Swinney to?
Yeah.
See, Feinbaum thinks that Pruitt will be the next coach at Alabama, but if Pruitt don't get Tennessee turned around, there ain't no way he's coming to Alabama. He's got to get Tennessee into national consideration for Alabama to even think about him. And he was like, well, historically, Alabama has got to have somebody. Nick Saban's really been the only outsider that's come in. This is a totally different game. Before Nick Saban, it was Mike Shula, it was Dennis Franchione, it was Mike DeBose and it was Gene Stallings. You know, there was only a certain few coaches there, and that's been so long ago as the mid 2000s. The game has changed so much even since then, and recruiting has changed so much even since then. An outsider can come in as long as he's got Alabama values, like.
But Dabo's not an outsider though.
But well, he's not an outsider. I'm talking about, like, you know, even if he wasn't to come here, you know, it doesn't have to immediately go to an Alabama alum like Pruitt. Like, if Dabo Swinney was not to leave Clemson for some reason, then it wouldn't be a stretch for an outsider to come in. You know, it wouldn't be a stretch for, dare I say it, and, you know, I know this is going to be like blasphemous, but dare I say, like, if he could, it wouldn't be a stretch for Urban Meyer to come to Alabama and win a lot of games. It just wouldn't. He could come here and he would win at Alabama.
Oh yeah,
it'd be
because he's a good recruiter. He's a good ball coach.
You don't have to have somebody that went to Alabama to come in here and coach at Alabama. Now, if Dabo Swinney is the top one on everybody's list, and he should be for good reason. He's got Clemson in 2 national championships. He's the best coach in Clemson history at this point.
He turned that program around.
I mean, he turned the program completely around. Tommy Bowden didn't do that much with it, and then Dabo took over, and he has dominated.
No more
especially
Clemsoning.
No more Clemsoning. But, you know, he's going to be the top guy on Bama's list. But if he spurns Bama for some reason, or if he won't stay at Clemson for life, let him. But that doesn't mean you go immediately to Jeremy Pruitt, because Jeremy Pruitt, if he doesn't turn Tennessee into a national power again, he does not get consideration at Alabama whatsoever. And there's some stupid names that have come up in the, well, if Dabo spurns Alabama, who are the top choices? And you got Pruitt. Somebody said Lane Kiffin. That ain't happening. Not that I don't like Lane Kiffin. I thought he did some great things at offensive coordinator, but he is not going to be a head coach at Alabama. It's just not happening.
It doesn't fit the personality.
Then somebody said, like, Josh Gaddis, the guy that left to be the offensive coordinator at Michigan. That's not happening at all. That's as dumb as I can't understand how people got a job writing for Saturday Down South, and they say something stupid like, "Oh, he's a top 5 guy. If Swinney spurns Alabama, Josh Gaddis is the number 4 guy that they would look at." That's not happening at all. They would hire from within and hire Pete Golding as the head coach before they do Josh Gaddis. Are you kidding me? Everybody's like, Josh Gaddis is an up and comer. We'll see. Everybody always talks about everybody being up and comers until they actually get a head coaching job, and then they don't know what they're doing. Then somebody said, like, Billy Napier, who's at Louisiana Lafayette right now, unless he turns them into a national power or turns them into a great program, which he did good in his first year, but unless he takes another job, turns that program into a national power, he ain't going to even get.
You might as well hire Joe Montana.
Listen, I don't know who needs to be told this, but when Nick Saban retires at Alabama, it's going to be hard to fill his shoes. And there's probably not going to be a lot of coaches that want to have to step in and fill his shoes because it's tough.
It's not the job, it's the fan base.
But it's the fan base. But the thing is regardless, it's going to be the top job in the country when it comes open. I don't care what anybody says about Texas or Notre Dame when
Texas
they come
hasn't
open.
Been relevant since 2009.
Exactly. Alabama, when Nick Saban retires, I don't care if they go 10-3 his last year. Alabama will be the top job in the country when Nick Saban retires. And if it don't go to Dabo Swinney, it's going to go to somebody else who is a marquee head coach.
Okay.
It ain't going to go to somebody that's had an 8-4 season with Tennessee like Jeremy Pruitt. It's not going to go to somebody like Josh Gaddis, who hasn't even been a head coach yet. It's not going to go to Billy Napier, who's still at Louisiana Lafayette right now. It's not going to go to somebody that was a Saban assistant just because they were a Saban assistant. It's going to go to a marquee head coach because Alabama will riot if they don't get somebody good.
So, as we always have, I always try to have a topic for our last topic that's off the wall. How do you think Tua will do the next level? And do you think that obviously he's the best quarterback player ever? He's got the best receiving group around him.
Mm-hmm.
And we've only seen, not that Tua hasn't lived up to his potential, but I wonder how he would do in a different program that threw a lot. Maybe some kind of like Oregon or some Big 12 program. And this is a weird question, but because somebody said, I think it was Colin, says that they don't think Tua is going to do very. He doesn't think Tua is going to do very well because he's never had to play from behind, and he's got a lot of good players around him, which is absurd. Like, how can you knock a player for being good because he has good talent?
Okay, Deshaun Watson had a lot of good players around him too.
Yeah. So it's not that. That statement is just retarded. Colin's an idiot.
It's gotten old with the whole. I can understand concerns about maybe the other players make you look better than you really are, but everybody takes that to the extreme. Like, everybody thinks that that's the only reason why anybody plays good.
It's
No, they
not
play
like
good.
He didn't break Marcus Mariota's records at high school, win state championships, and then had any pick at whatever program.
It's not like he shattered every Alabama record that's ever been in existence at quarterback.
And didn't play less games.
Total.
Break it down. But how do you think he's going to do in the NFL?
I think the thing about Tua is he's got to stop trying to force deep balls and trying to force big plays. Saban talked about it the other day in a press conference. He was like, Tua has got to, when he stayed in the confines of the offense, protected the ball, did what he was supposed to do. You saw it for the first half of the season. He didn't throw an interception, and he was on fire. He started getting confident and saying, I'm going to start forcing this ball downfield because I think I can do it, and he started missing them. And, those plays where he throws it downfield and we're like, oh, my God, here we go. It's fixed to hit somebody in the hands. At the end of the year, it wasn't hitting people in the hands because he was forcing the deep ball, And I was listening to 97.7 The Zone the other day, and they were on there talking about, half the time Tua was throwing deep balls and the running back would be wide open in the flats, and he's just trying to force a deep ball. He's got to start playing again within the confines of the offense. He's fantastic, and I'm tired of all these people saying, well, you're Tua. I don't know why there's so many Alabama fans that hate Tua or hate the fact that people like Tua. They call them Tua groupies, but that's just ridiculous. I mean, Tua is still the greatest quarterback that's played there. I don't care what anybody says. I know that Broadway Joe played there. I know Kenny the Snake played there. But Tua's got as much arm, as much athleticism, and he's shattered every record easily. I mean,
his first year starting.
Easily. He's going to, I think he gets, I mean, if he just goes to some program or goes to some franchise where they just got some run-of-the-mill head coach that don't know what he's doing, he probably won't do well. But if he goes to a franchise that's got a good offensive mind, either a coordinator or a head coach, and he plays within the confines of that guy's offense, he'll be every bit as good as anybody expects him to be. He's a thick-built guy. He did have an injury last year, that knee that he had to deal with, but I think he's a thick-built guy, and I do think he's probably less injury-prone than we think. We just kind of, he messed up that knee, and it was just messed up all year, and he couldn't never get it healthy because he's week in, week out in the SEC. I think he's going to get in there and he's going to lift weights, and I think he'll be a lot less injury prone than we think.
I think my biggest concern is his health, and what makes Tom Brady so great is he gets the ball out so quick.
Yeah.
When you hit Tom Brady over and over and over, you affect him, and he doesn't play the same. That's my only concern.
Yeah, and a lot of like him getting hit last year had to do with, sometimes that offensive line just collapsed, like Lester Cotton being on there, and that didn't work out too well. But I think he'll be a fine quarterback in the NFL. He's got to be paired with somebody that's going to have a good offense set up for him. But he's got the natural talent to do whatever he wants in the NFL.
I wonder if what teams would be interested, because obviously it's not even fall camp yet.
Well, if Fitzmagic and the Dolphins lose a bunch of games this year, it'll be the Dolphins he probably goes to.
See, I was going to talk about a meme that I saw, and it had Josh Rosen. It had this distraught face of Josh Rosen, and it said whenever you realize when you get traded, and the Dolphins are going to take the next to take 2 and number 1 overall.
Yeah. Walter Football was saying it, and I kind of agree with him. He thinks that the Lions should trade Matthew Stafford, get as much picks as they can, and tank for Tua. It's a bold strategy because you got to put trust that Tua is going to come into the NFL and be awesome. But the way that he put it, as he's like, Matthew Stafford ain't going to win nothing with the Lions anyway because they're taking him away from what he does best, which is throw the ball a lot. They're trying to run the ball more. They're trying to grind the ball out more. And, they just need a solid quarterback. They don't really need Matthew Stafford anymore if that's what they're going to do. Because Matthew Stafford's always been throwing the ball left and right, here and there and the other. You might as well trade him, get some picks, and that way you've also got enough cap space to start making a bunch of moves because you don't have to pay Matthew Stafford a ridiculous amount of money. You might as well just start over. If you're going to start over with Matt Patricia's not going to use Matthew Stafford. Get picks, cut the salary cap down, and start over.
I like that. I think if Tua just, this goes for a lot of teams, and from high school to the pros, they would just take what teams give them. There would be a lot more football games won.
Absolutely. I think so.
That's what makes New England so good. They don't have an ego.
Yep. Their ego, all they're about is winning. It's about winning, and it's about team.
I mean, you have the greatest quarterback of all time who took a pay cut to stay there.
Yep.
So
every time.
Well, Nathan, I believe that wraps it up because I'm pretty hungry.
Yep.
And that's all of our topics.
Sounds about right.
Well, guys,
very enjoyable.
This is our post-draft podcast. Also, congratulate Nathan because he is now offensive and defensive line coach for middle school and is helping assist with the high school team as well, where he's observing and doing his supervision.
Yeah,
so
thank you.
Get on there and congratulate
awesome.
Nathan. But this is Clint Guffey signing off.
Nathan McLaughlin signing off. See you next time.
Thanks for listening, guys.